Okay, so the next thing that I wanted to talk about today in my third GitHub video is how branches work. Now, when you think about a branch, you want to think about the idea of essentially creating another version of your program that you're working on and you're playing around with, but you don't want to mess up your actual code. And then once you get it working, you want to merge that code in to your actual code. So right now when we look at our code on Git, we see that we have this main branch. And if I click on the drop down, it allows me to switch between branches that I have. Now I only have one branch right now, and many people always work within their main branch, and there is nothing wrong with that. But I wanted you to understand how multiple branches work in case this is something that you wanted to explore. Now we can see here how many branches we have, and so if you're ever wondering how many are going on, you can see that right here. And if you wanted to switch between branches, you can do that with this drop down. So what we're going to do in our GitHub desktop is we are going to take a look. So right now everything that we're doing is in our class list app. And what I have is I have my other computer also logged into this same project. So I want to simulate what would happen if you were doing some work at home and at school, or in two different places, essentially. And that way you could see how Git can be used to make that process really easy for you to work with. So right now I'm on this computer, and let's say I open up my code and I don't even know what I want to change on here. Let's just say I change this and I say, okay, you know what? Shannon Denna is going to teach this class, which should be really interesting because I don't even know what Yoga Niche is, but I'm going to teach it. Okay. Now I want you to notice that as soon as I hit save over here, you can see on my GitHub desktop that I have changes. And like we talked about in the last videos, we can see that the red is something that was deleted, the green is something that was changed, or added rather. We can see these are both line 17, and we can see the changes. Now, if I like this change and I'm positive I want to keep it, I can commit it to the main branch. Now let's say I'm currently making changes to the schedule, but I'm not sure if it's final yet and I don't want to push it live. Well, what I could do is I could make a new branch. So I could go up here to my current branch drop down, and I could say, you know what, I'm going to make a new branch. Now we can see here a recent branch that I had, and this is actually a branch that I had and I was playing around with and then I deleted. I'm going to make a new branch, and I'm just going to call it MLK schedule. All right, and this is not a branch that I have, so I'm going to say new branch. And I'm going to create that branch. And then this is saying, well, where do I want to put these changes? Do I want them on the main branch, or do I want to put these changes on this new branch I just created? And since I'm not sure if this schedule is going to be final, I don't even know what Yoga Niche is, so am I going to teach it? Probably not. But right now I'm going to put these changes on the MLK schedule for MLK weekend that we have coming up, and I'm going to say switch branch. So now when I go ahead and I commit to this, what I have done is I have committed changes to that specific branch. Now, if we look over here at this right-hand window, recall what we see going on over here. So first of all, no local changes. That means that there's nothing on my computer, on my local machine, that is uncommitted, meaning everything that I have changed on my computer has been committed into Git, and GitHub Desktop knows what I want to do with it. However, it hasn't been published to GitHub. So because I haven't published it to my site online, it's only contained on my computer. So if I were to go on my other computer, or if somebody else was a collaborator and they were working at another location and they tried to access my change, they wouldn't be able to see it. So now, if I were to go ahead and say publish branch, now I can see up top that I'm pushing, and I'm pushing this online, and now that has been pushed. So now if I go up to my website page and I refresh, notice I now see that I have two branches. And so here's what I want you to pay attention to. I can toggle between the two different sets of code. So right now, if I were to click on my class, because I'm in the main branch, currently this Yoga Niche class is still being taught by Sherry Zhang. However, if I were to click on the MLK schedule branch and take a look at the code in that scenario, I can see, Shannon Denna, guest instructor, watch out now, is teaching the class. Now, the beauty of using branches is it allows us to have the code We can work on the code, we can make changes, we can still push it to GitHub so others can see it, but we haven't messed up our final code. The good rule of thumb is that your main code, this main branch, should always be your code that is ready to be deployed, like your perfect working code. So if you're working on a new feature, if you're trying to fix a bug, if you're trying to add new functionality, you should be doing that in a branch. And then once it's all good to go, then you merge it into your main. Now, I know many students last year did all of their work within main and they didn't have any problems. So you might find that branches are just an extra step of difficulty that you don't want. But I wanted you to be aware of how they worked. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on my other computer. I'm going to pause this video and I'm going to make some changes on my other computer so that way you can see how this looks. Okay, so on my other computer, I went ahead and I made some more changes to the file and I pushed those changes up to Git using the same branch for the MLK schedule. Now on the MLK schedule, I can see those changes that were made. I can see a new comment and I can see it was made 42 seconds ago. If I go into my main branch, again, I can see that none of those changes are reflected here. And so now at this point, you might say, okay, well, how do I know what those changes look like? Well, why don't we go into GitHub Desktop? Because if we were working on the computer, we would want those changes to be reflected in our code. So if we go to fetch, this is going to pull those changes down. So I'm going to do this pull. And then this 1+, this is basically telling me, hey, there was one commit from the remote, from the origin remote, from off-site, not on this computer. So this current branch, MLK schedule, has a commit that is not on your machine. So it's basically asking you, do you want to pull this commit in? Do you want to check this code? So remember, push means you push it up to Git. Pull means you pull it down to your computer. So I'm going to pull this down. And after I pull this down, now I can go ahead and I can take a look at what happened. So again, under changes, there's no changed files, but if I click on history, I can see, look at all these different names. And if I click on this, I can see right here, this was the title modified. Oh, I didn't even spell that right. Oops. Modified new class for Shannon Denna. She didn't know what Yoganish was, so we let her teach what she knows how to do. And so we can see that the code was changed. And if we were to go into where I have my code base in Visual Studio, wow, look at that. It has already been changed in my code base. And I don't know about you, but this sounds like a pretty amazing class. 5 hours of boot camp. Oh yeah, I get fit or die trying. Sign me up. Okay, I guess maybe 300 minutes is a little extreme, but you know, just saying. Okay, so anyway, my point is this is a super cool way that you can always have your code like synced and ready to go. All right, so now you might be saying, okay, well, that's cool, Miss Denna. However, once I get my branch good, how do I go ahead and get it good to go with my main? Like when I want to put the two together. So what this does is this essentially, we want to create what's called a pull request. Now, a pull request is taking this current branch and it's saying, I want to propose to have these changed branched into my main. So if I create a pull request, now it's going to bring up my Git and it's going to say, okay, what do I want to do with this? And it's basically giving me a choice to kind of show what I want to do. So I want to be able to take this MLK schedule and I want to merge that code into my base. I want to take these changes and put them into my base main branch. And I'm just going to call this MLK update after 8 p.m. Okay. And then I will say create pull request. Now, after I do this, this is essentially an open pull request. So you'll see at the top it shows that this repository has a pull request open. Now, if my project had multiple collaborators on here, they could log in, they could see, oh, hey, there's active pull requests. Maybe one person was working on, a certain functionality, another person was working on a different functionality, and they thought that that functionality was ready to go, they could create a pull request, and then you know that that code is ready for you to look at. And you could take it and you could download that branch onto your computer, you could run it, you could check it out, and you can go ahead and you can comment back and forth. It's great how you can use this to work back and forth and communicate remotely with your collaborators. So once you've decided that, yeah, you're good to go, then you can go ahead and you can merge them. So when I write merge and then confirm, this is going to put those two pieces of code together. So when I merge my code together, now it's going to say, all right, you have successfully merged that code back together. And now that you've done that, you don't need this branch anymore because the code that was in there has already been merged in. It was like safe code, but now that you've put it into the actual files, you don't need it. So we can safely delete it, and we want to do that. You do not want to keep all these temp files, these temporary branches. So I'm going to delete that branch. And then now, when I look back at my code base, I will see that I only have one branch, and I will see that I have just the main code. And if I click on this, I will now see that my new code reflects this extreme workout class that used to be in my MLK schedule branch, but now I have merged that code into my main branch. Now, one thing that I noticed when I went back into GitHub Desktop, just like how I mentioned that when we were in GitHub Online, we only see the one branch now. And in that one branch it's essentially been deleted. When we're in GitHub Desktop, I've noticed that the other branches are still there. It shows them as being accessible. It shows them as recent branches. And I don't know if that's a bad thing. Honestly, I'm not sure because I'm still getting used to using the branches. So what I would recommend is if you do start using branches, after you do your merging within the online component like we did over here, and you come back into the desktop, switch back into your main branch, and then do a fetch origin so that way it can update as it is. And then that way your code will be good to go. All right, so hopefully these 3 little series of videos have given you all you need to get started using Git.